Just waiting for Norrie. Now, for those of you who are still here, I can see there's one person waiting at the moment. We'll be with you shortly. Just waiting for Norrie to come online. He's, I think, sweeping the floor in his shed at the moment, getting ready for this morning's broadcast. So hang around for a few more minutes. We should have Norrie up on the screen just in a few minutes' time, I hope. Let's give it a moment and see what happens. Hi, morning, David. How are you? Good to see you up there. I see another few more people joining us now. We'll be going live just in a few more minutes. Just sent a link over to Norrie, and I'm waiting for him to finish sweeping and hoovering the shed so that he can come online and join us for about 9:30. Today's topic is going to be sport, so we'll have a lot to say on how sport has been broadcast, how it's been used in Scotland, how it's been instrumental in making us feel poor about our own sporting prowess, and what happened in various tournaments that Scotland was involved in, how they were manipulated. Now, Scotland was manipulated as well in the past. However, we'll get on to that just shortly. I'm hoping Norrie will join me just in a few more minutes. Let's see if he's around. I'm hoping Norrie will join us just shortly. In the meantime, talk amongst yourselves. Another couple of minutes, we'll be live. I'll see if I can get Norrie up online for you in a moment. If nothing happens at 9:30, don't panic. It's probably just a technical problem. I've got Norrie back. Here he is now. Okay, let's get Norrie back on the screen. Hello, Norrie. Can you hear me? Hi, Norrie.
Gordon, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
You're just a little bit quiet, Norrie. Can you turn your microphone volume up a tiny bit?
I can turn it up a big bit. How's that?
That's a lot better. I can see you've dusted the shed. You need some new curtains up, though. It's looking a bit bare behind you there.
Yes, it is. Well, it's a shed, Gordon. It's not my front room, you know.
I know, you don't want to give it airs and graces it doesn't deserve, I know. Anyway, I think it is 1 minute to go, Norrie. 1 minute before 9:30. So I'll give the viewers who are online in a minute a little bit of a pep talk and remind everybody to both like and share and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell because it makes this program far more popular and it gets seen more widely, doesn't it?
Yeah, indeed it does. And if we've got a chance to go over some of the questions, well, not some of the remarks of last week's show, Gordon, that might be nice as well, just to give a few name checks.
It's always interesting to pick up the threads of the previous week. Anyway, it's now gone 9:30, so I'd like to welcome all our regular viewers and those who are new to the channel to Hod My Jacket, a new style of online broadcasting between myself here at Inde-Car and Norrie Hunter of Caledon Radio and Caledon Media, and the two of us discussing the weeks, the general events around Scotland and what they mean and how the situation in Scotland is at the moment and how we got here. Today's topic is sport, which we will go into at great length, I guess, Norrie, in due course. But before we get launched into the sport, well, we've had some reaction to last week's programme, have we not?
Well, this is from the webpage at Caledon Media, caledonmedia.scot. People leave messages there after it was posted up there as well. Gordon Nielsen in Aberdeen says, fascinating discussion on customs and the money and jobs it would bring in. Good work, guys. Mary in Shotts, she says, when I'm driving to work, I notice very frequently drains on the road and my car bumps violently over them. I always wondered why they were there. We did Real last week. And last one, there's a few, but this is mainly the thrust of what people were talking about. Isabel McGowan in Wishaw says, this has to be one of the most important podcasts that concerns the safety of our people. This was about customs, Gordon, remember,
Yes.
and protecting our borders and stuff. The
Yeah.
show should be repeated and watched again.
Oh,
So that's a kind of flavour of what's coming in.
wonderful comments. And if anything, Norrie, it just supports you know, a request for people to make comments like that, you know, and leave them in the comment section below the program, and make comments while we're talking live as well, because we can actually see them on the screen while we're talking. Norrie, where shall we start? We've done a little bit of a recap on the response to last week, but we discussed at length before this show what we were going to talk about, and there are many different sports we could discuss, but the biggie has got to be football, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Gordon, how do we correlate what happens in football, Scottish football, with the general pattern around the world? And we see that Scotland has been stymied at every opportunity. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, every time Scotland wears the blue, and that's an identifiable colour for Scotland, it's blue and white. It's not got the red in it for the GB team. It's just Scotland standalone.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that are put in Scotland's way to stop them getting further and further. Now, why would Britain, UK not want Scotland or Wales to go any further? Well, you have to go back to a guy called Tony Benn, and what he said was, to keep control of the people, you first must demoralise them, and then you must make them scared. So it's a demoralisation. If you've got people demoralised, you can control them.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that the whole of Scotland gets behind? It's when their team plays in blue. Rugby, curling, football, hockey, you name it. Shinty, when Scotland plays Ireland in the Celtic, it's hardly ever televised, and there's no coverage of it. Everything we get is through a British media, and it gives us Liverpool, Manchester United, foreign teams, right? So why is that? That's the case, so they can control us. Now, I want to go back to 1970s and the World Cup, when Scotland had one of the best teams in the world, Gordon. I don't remember it that well, but you had Kenny Dalglish, you had people like Joe Jordan, you had a fifth, if they didn't do seasons in, but they were really fifth, sixth, or seventh in the world. They were that good.
Yeah.
They were due to go to the World Cup in 1978. But what we know and what we are going to talk about today is that the euphoria in Scotland was at fever pitch because it's Scotland's oil. The banner, it was everywhere. Oil had just been discovered in the North Sea. It's Scotland's oil. The banners were everywhere. SNP had 11, the most they've ever had MPs in the House of Commons. And you had the Macron report. It was published in 1974. Now, we weren't privy to this at the time. This was a secret document that revealed that if Scotland became an independent country or even devolved, they'd be wanting a huge cut of this if they put their heads together. Can't afford that. But what the British establishment were up against was this euphoria of Scotland going its own way. Now, remember I said that if you've got a demoralised country, you have them controllable. What if you have them the opposite way? They're uncontrollable, Gordon. So you can't, with your government, do anything to usurp it. So what you've got to do is you've got to burst the balloon at some point. So here's my story. You already know about the Macron report and the oil that came on shore. And guess what was going to come around the corner in 1979? This is what the English government absolutely were petrified of. It was an assembly for Scottish Home Rule, right? It was an assembly. They couldn't have this because that would open the genie from the bottle, and the Scots would run away with all the oil because they were in such a state of euphoria because of the football. What do? They use the football, and this is why we're talking about sport today on the show. They use sport to bring down Scotland. So you're up in the high, and they have to bring them down to the low. So how did they go about this? Very, very careful planning indeed. They got in touch with a guy called Ernie Walker, who was the chief executive of the SFA at the time. And he had to, it was his responsibility to flights, hotels, training facilities, all that kind of stuff. And they nobbled them. And you don't have to take my word for it. In Willie Johnson's book, his autobiography, he says they flew to Argentina, and when they got there, they were knackered, jet lag and all the rest of it. And they went to a hotel that hadn't even been built. So this is tactics from warfare. You put prisoners in places, and you deprive them of sleep, so that they're malleable and they're easy to interrogate. They put Scotland football team to a half-built hotel. There was noise going on. There was builders building the other half, and their training facilities. Even their bus broke down. Now here's the thing, Gordon. You're a sportsman in his prime. You have to keep working your muscles. You have to keep working your heart and your lungs. You have to acclimatize. You have to get that air into your system because it's a different altitude. And you go there and you have to work out and become stronger and acclimatize. That was denied to Scotland. And this was the thing that they wanted, because that team, the Scottish people were putting their faith in that team. That team had to be destroyed, ruined, wrecked. So what they did was, the first game, the players were at 75%, not 100%, which you've got to be for a World Cup.
Absolutely.
And you can see them. And I can't remember this, but I've watched YouTube films, Gordon, for this. And I've noticed that the Scottish team were running about chasing shadows. They were a yard short, as they say in football and sport. They were really behind the play. And there was a shot and goal that they got their Peru. Costa who was it? Costa Rica? Was it? Who did we play? I can't mind. But the first team,
South American team.
I can't mind who it was. But anyway, the ball went flying past, and Alan Ruff didn't even put his hand up. A natural goalkeeper reaction is that. It's movement, explosive movement.
Yeah.
And it was near post. Too tired, too wrecked, lost the game. Drew against a really, really poor Iran team. And then we changed hotels, and then it was all over, because even if we won against Holland, we'd still be out. So it was all relaxed, and we won that game, and we were back to full strength, and we took the game to them. But there's another thing that happened in that. Two things that happened in that episode. The first thing was Willie Johnston was deemed to have taken an illegal drug, a banned substance. The SFA threw him out. They didn't even get behind him and back the guy.
They got sent home, I remember,
His life was in ruins. This was another bolt-on.
Your signal's breaking up a bit, Norrie.
Okay, this is another bolt-on bolt, if you like, to keep down the Scottish people. And the other thing was, at the first time ever, Gordon, the press were against Scotland, and we recognised this. We recognise it now. At the time, we didn't. But they took stills of Ali MacLeod with his head in his hands. He had shaken his head. He was looking at the ground. And it was printed in the Daily Record, the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, and all over the place. Scotland's shame. And they managed to get Scotland from that euphoria to that despair. Now Scotland could be governable. And the next year, the Scots went out with their heads hanging high, very low. We didn't want to do anything. We came to an assembly. We voted for 40%. We got the most of the votes. They changed the rules on that to 40% rule. And another chance for Scotland through sport deflated the people. That's what we're up against, Gordon. And that's the story of 1970. There's hundreds of them about how we can't get our watch Scotland on pay-per-view on free telly. And when we do get it on free telly, it's lackluster. It's the sounds ahead of the pictures. It's
pure quality.
It's shocking, God. So I wonder what you thought about that time when you were, if you can remember it. How did you feel before and after?
Your signal's disappearing, Norrie. Are you still hearing me okay, Norrie? I've lost your signal.
I'm hearing you fine. Yep, I'm hearing you fine, Gordon. You've stopped. You've stalled. I think Gordon's gone.
Hey, Norrie.
There you go, Gordon. You're back.
Yeah, I had a signal drop out. Don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. You were
No, that's
asking me
fine.
about this and what I thought of the way that football had been used during that World Cup. I think that was the very beginning of the Scotland is shite campaign,
Yeah,
where we lost faith in our national football team. Not only did we lose faith in them, but we lost faith in all of our players from top flight clubs that we would ever be able to put together a viable competitive team ever again. And that set the tone for just about every other international competition we've been in since. That whenever we go out there, we're always expecting to fail. And we we don't deserve to be there, we're not good enough, and it's most likely we'll be sent home with our tail between our legs. Now, I think you're right. I think this was a deliberate ploy, but it worked a lot better than the British government thought it would, because the effects of it have lasted till the present day.
I
Whereas
know.
previously they must have thought, well, it might be just enough to make the Scots, despair of themselves and feel useless and worthless enough that the apathy sets in and they won't turn out to vote for independence. And they were right in this case. Not enough turned out to vote. And they managed to move the goalposts figuratively so that there was a level at which, if there wasn't enough of a turnout at the ballot, it wouldn't matter whether you got a majority or not. And that's why we lost in 79. And we had to wait
Yeah.
all the way until 1997 to finally get a pretend parliament, which is what we have now. However, having said all of that, they the sport is still being manipulated. As you said, when we do get to watch our own national side play live on TV for free, the
Mhm.
quality of that is terrible. The sound quality is bad. It lags, it glitches, and they've obviously spent absolutely nothing on the outside broadcast. It's the bare
Mhm.
minimum they can get away with. So yeah, they're still at it. They're still gerrymandering sport as though they were gerrymandering politics. But as
Yeah.
you say, sport and politics do mix. They do go together and they're interlinked. And I think I said to you last week, to my mind, sport is the expression, it's warfare expressed on a playing field. It's
Yep.
basically the countries fight each other on a stage of grass, basically 11 against 11, kicking the ball from one end to the other, trying to score goals. And it's just a form of warfare which has been ritualized. And because it's that, it's a national form of sport. And that's why it's so effective when they can make a team lose by depriving them of sleep, for example. Yeah.
Well, do you remember? I think it was the First World War. The Germans and the British stopped fighting and they played a game of football. When they took back their sport and they realised they've got more in common than they have fighting each other. But then
Yeah.
natural order resumed and they started shooting each other and killed everybody. But then that gave you an insight about how we are. We love our sport. We love following something. We're conditioned to follow something. And it's is it chance or design? Well, it's design. And we don't have to look far in Scotland to see where this design plays into the hands of the British establishment. Celtic and Rangers, the classic divide and rule. We were talking off air, Gordon, about the sport we take part in, the sport we watch. And I was
Yeah.
saying
The
to
two.
you that here in Drumnadrochit, where the local shinty team is Glenucher, all of those players come from the school. They've all matured through the grassroots, and now they play for their own village here in Drumnadrochit. And they are immensely proud of the fact that all their mates are with them playing the game of shinty.
Yeah.
They don't go on a bus down to Glasgow every second week. They stay here and they play their sport. So there's two things: spectator sport and participative sport as well. If I can get my teeth in.
I'm losing.
Participating sports. We're gone.
Move the car to a slightly different. Yeah, all right. I can hear you. I was just considering moving my studio to get a better signal.
It's every time we get to a really important point, we're assault, don't we? Something happens to us.
We get sabotaged, yes.
Yeah. But we have to awaken people to this. Why are we absorbed by Celtic and Rangers, bigger clubs? And why are we watching television more than what we're doing in our own communities? That's conditioning of the people. It's colonisation, Gordon. And there's a big debate on this about how Scotland is colonised. And one of the ways they can control us is by sport. And they give us Celtic and Rangers because that means we're fighting at the ground level between ourselves. We're not looking at them, but we should be fighting them.
Very little free.
And so this is a well-worn argument about sport and how it's used. You still there, George? I can hear.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry about the noises behind you. Yeah, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
So even you, I think you're a Partick Thistle fan, so you've bucked the trend of supporting those big two, the Ugly Sisters. But millions don't, and millions across the world follow those two teams just because they're on telly, and they can have 90 minutes of excitement. Now, see today, after say Celtic played yesterday, today, how has that affected your life?
Yeah, exactly. It's like watching a movie. It doesn't affect reality in any way.
That's right. It doesn't, and the diehards will go online and start up a forum and all the rest of it, keeping the thing going, just to keep their interest going. But they're the vultures feeding off the carcass. They're the ones that are trying to make money out of Celtic and Rangers. You know what I mean? They're the ones that are trying to push it. Ordinary Joes out here, like me and you, couldn't care less about Celtic and Rangers. Why? Because it detracts and takes our time away from real issues. And once we get that in our heads, who's the fool here? We're in the austerity, Gordon. We're up to our necks in inflation. And yet there's some people look at a football match and go, aye, but Celtic are playing Hearts tomorrow. That's where we are.
Everything's fine.
That's the reality, Gordon.
But the thing also, football traditionally was the sport of the working people, because when it first burst forth and became an organised sport where people would pay to go in, you got massive crowds. I mean, even fairly small football clubs would get tens of thousands of people attending their games, and they were all on televisions. People would stand and watch, for the full 90 minutes. And that went on for years until they brought in seated stadiums. But I think the interesting thing is that it was a sport that was affordable to go and watch. And it wasn't until it was televised that it really took off. Once there was money in advertising and the big clubs were a big draw, getting big audiences on TV, then the TV companies would bid for the rights to televise those games. And those clubs were making money out of it, obviously, because that money was going to them. It was going to the football associations of the day. But then there's the question, Norrie, of why are there two football associations? Why is there an English FA, which is just called the FA? It's not even called the English FA, and a Scottish Football Association. If the United Kingdom was really a United Kingdom, there should have been a British League with all of the clubs across this entire island mainland should have been represented, and yet there isn't. Why is that, I wonder?
Well, you remember what we said at the start of the show. Football is used to control and demoralise. If you didn't have the football, you'd have to think of something else to demoralise the Scots. So it's there for a purpose, Gordon. It's there to keep us really underneath the radar. on a world stage, first of all, and not let the Scots know about the successes, because that's the other thing we haven't talked about yet, is what we don't get broadcast to us. So while we're busy getting excited about Celtic and Rangers, or some of us are, Scotland are doing well at the curling. They're world champions. They've just beat Canada. Do you know what I mean? And BBC have got it on BBC have got it on their iPlayer. What we do? It should be on their main channels, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. And we've got Scottish champions all over the place, and we never hear about them. We never hear about them until
there's been bowling teams. There's been kayaking teams, for goodness' sake, all kinds of sports that Scots
shooting teams. Yep.
And yet they get no mentions at all. And they get no mentions at all, obviously, for a reason, and that's because they don't want us to know about our successes. And that actually is not just in sport, that's in news generally, as you know. BBC Scotland seems to have a policy of only commenting negatively about Scotland in its news broadcasting. So if it's true in news broadcasting, then the same attitude is obviously present in sport broadcasting as well. What little of it there actually is, and it's a very small amount. I mean, I know that I've been to a few Partick games that have been televised, but they've been televised on BBC Alba.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't make them less enjoyable, but it makes you ask the question, why aren't they on BBC One Scotland? And the obvious answer to that is because then everybody'd be able to see them.
Yes, exactly.
If they put them on Alba, then there is much less chance that your average English-speaking Lowland Scots will watch it on there, because they're frightened that it's all going to be in Gaelic and won't understand a thing. Even though football can be easily understood and most of the Gaelic presenters can speak English, and there is usually an English chat or in the English chat at half time. So yeah, it's all about making sure we don't see things that are fun or they're enjoyable, or where we get to see our sports personalities and athletes doing really well. Now, you and I mentioned also about other forms of sport that Scotland excelled at. And I'm thinking of, I mean, you can reel them all off. There have been lots of runners like Liz McColgan, long distance duration runners. There's been people like Chris Hoy, cyclist. There have
Andy Murray.
Andy Murray, tennis player, one of the biggest stars of all of Scotland. And then you've got, if you go back in time a bit further, you've got motor racing legends. You know, you've got Jackie Stewart, you've got Sterling Moss. You've David Coulthard and Colin McRae from the rallying world. And yet, you know, for years since, we actually haven't seen or heard of any motor racing Scots at all. It's just been a complete silence, radio silence for years.
Yeah. Can I tell you a story? Maybe it brings an answer to that, Gordon. The last Formula One driver that Scotland really had was David Coulthard.
Yep.
And David Coulthard had a saltire on his head, on his helmet, on top of it.
Yeah.
Now, when the overhead cameras were down, it was seen. You could tell it was him. And Ron Dennis, I can't remember what team it was, offered David Coulthard £1 million to take it off his hat, his helmet. Take it off. And Coulthard says, "Not in your Nelly. I've got to stand on that podium with a Union flag behind me and listen to God Save the Queen," it was at the time, when he won a podium place. He says, "I'm going to have something that tells me I'm Scottish." So we're fighting against it all the time. £1 million he refused from Ron Dennis to take that off his helmet. It is outrageous. God, we've got a message here from Molly Cuddle. She says, "All great footballers are mainly from Scotland. Shankly, Dalglish, Nicol, etc., etc." The thing is, I would argue that they're only great because they went to England.
Well, that's a problem too, Norrie, isn't it? When Scotland produces great homegrown talent and football players, they have to go to England to find the money, because they won't make a decent wage here. They don't have a future in the Scottish game because it's too shallow a pond to swim in. A big fish like that can't survive in a wee talent pool for long. He's got to go out somewhere else, or she nowadays, because there's a lot of women football players as well. You've got to get out of Scotland and into the wider world. And be present on the international market for being bought by other big clubs. A lot of players go to England. Some of them go abroad to Europe, but all of them have been immense talents that have been lost. It's not just a brain drain from Scotland. There's also a talent drain of sporting prowess as well. It's not just our ability to think and build things. It's our ability to perform well in sporting events. All the time, our best talent has been exported out of the country because the British state has made sure that there's no future for them here. And it's been engineered that way, so there is no future for them here. They have to go to England.
Yeah.
The other thing, Norrie, is that the Scottish population, as you know, and this is talking a little bit about demographics. I know it's a bit off a tangent here.
No.
Scottish demographics are shrinking. We are seeing our numbers, our population numbers going down, right? But in the period that Scotland's population has been flatlining and then steadily dropping, and that's quite a long period of time, by the way, England's population has gone up by nearly 300%. 300%, just gone like this, straight up. And you have to wonder why that is. And it's because of the policies that the British state has had, which make England seem, like it's paved with gold and everybody wants to go there. So all the Scots migrate to England. And they wonder why all these people are coming across the channel in rubber dinghies. It's because they've heard the stories as well that England, is a land of milk and honey and everybody should go there. So they've kind of been a victim of their own success now. But we have a problem. We can't attract talent because we don't have the money. England attracts too many people because they see or they're presenting themselves as having too much money. And that can be a problem as well. But I think for Scotland, we also talked, Norrie, at length about the idea of things like rugby sevens and smaller team sports, like even football sevens. And because you're dealing with smaller numbers of players, you can have far more competitive leagues because you don't have to train so many participants. And because of that, you get a much better talent pool, and the game is so faster and more open when there's fewer players, especially rugby. I think you might agree with me there. Sevens is a much faster paced sport.
Well, this grieves me somewhat because rugby sevens was developed in Scotland in Melrose, and the SRU a couple of years ago, with the help of Jim Magilton, who's an English coach, an English director of rugby, he decided that Scotland couldn't afford to have a sevens team, and we would merge together in a GB sevens team. And he was when he was doing his press conference, I remember him getting excited, Gordon, about how Scotland could add to their weight to this GB team. Wait a minute here. It's a sevens team. How many of those players are going to be English and how many are going to be Scottish? Even the British Lions, British and Irish Lions, have got a tour coming up this year. Do you know what, Gordon? I will not be supporting that shower of nonsense. Taking a British team and making it the biggest thing that you could ever achieve in rugby, even playing for Scotland, is down there. But the British Lions, that's the cusp, that is the top place to be. Absolute guff. So I wouldn't be watching it. And by the way, the Welsh won't be watching it either. they're fed up with it.
An interesting comment has just popped up at the bottom of my feed here from somebody called Class Action, and it says that grandfather was a professional footballer and played for Third Lanark. He had to move to Manchester City to make money in his career. There you go. There's a personal family there of a grandfather who was a professional player but couldn't make enough money in Scotland to earn a living from it. Had to go to Man City. That was the key. We actually forget that football, until fairly recently, wasn't actually a salaried sport at all. The football players virtually had to go on strike in order to force clubs to pay them to actually play football. So
True.
My dad used to talk about this in the past, about how the football players basically had to take action themselves in order to get paid at
Mm-hmm.
all.
I
And now,
know.
a few of them get paid massive amounts of money, and the rest of them get paid peanuts. It seems, it's not a very
Yeah.
it's not an even market.
But Gordon, you said, and I was trying to stop you at some point, but you were in full
Sorry.
flow, and it was about Scotland, all their footballers going down south. And I thought, on my feet, I thought, that's the same as industry. All our brilliant talent, because it's a brain drain, a talent drain, which you call it. I like that. Because if you look at people like even John Logie Baird, he couldn't survive. He couldn't go further with his inventions, his designs, and his imagination in Glasgow. He was rewarded by going to London, and now in some parts of the world, it was Britain, England that invented the television because Logie Baird was down there doing his bits and pieces. So what they do is they'll take our stuff and they'll remodel it and they'll put it out as theirs. I'll give you another thing because it deals with sport. The passing game of football was invented by Scotland. It was
I
Tanner
think that's
ball players, and even in Argentina and Brazil, two of the best teams in the world, they have statues to Scottish people who came over and taught them the passing game. So see when they say football's coming home, Gordon, they're lying through their teeth or they're ignorant about where that started. It was Scotland with its Tannibal players using their head, thinking that ball can travel faster than I can run. Let's play a passing game. It makes better sport, it makes better team spirit, and it wins games. And they developed it, and now Argentina and Brazil pay homage to the Scots guys that taught them that. It wasn't English, it wasn't Welsh, it wasn't Irish, it was Scots, only Scots. But that's airbrushed, and even worse than that, they're claiming it as their own because football's coming home to England. Football, they even wrote a song about it.
yeah.
You know, they
Well,
can't
to be
have, they
fair,
can't let us have anything, Gordon. That's a
there, there,
fact.
there are historical facts that seem to support the idea that actually Scotland had football hundreds of years before it was officially claimed to have been invented in England, and that actual remains of actual footballs that are hundreds and hundreds of years old have been found in Scottish historical sites that
Mhm.
prove that football predated the whole idea of the modern game by hundreds of years. It was played perhaps by villagers. It may not have had the same rules, but the essential
No,
idea of the sport was the same. You kick the ball towards a goal, and the opposing side tries to defend that goal. That's what football is, right?
yeah,
So the basic premise of it, you could probably claim that Scotland invented the entire sport. And you wouldn't be too far wrong because the English will
brilliant.
claim that they have an equal right to it. They'll have found remains of footballs in their historic sites. It probably arose in different places at similar times, and nobody can really claim to it. But we've got just as much right to say it's
Yes,
as anybody else's in Britain.
that's right.
And more so, as you say.
Give credit where it's due. I have not seen a statue anywhere in the world of an English person up and lauded for their contribution to world football, but I've seen two in South America, and they're both Scots. What does that tell you, Gordon?
Well, it
It
tells you
tells you,
that they remember who taught them how to play football in the first
aye.
place.
But there is one thing that bucks the trend of all sport, and it's golf. Because see when
Oh
a
God.
Scots get see when you're watching on television, there's a Scottish flag beside Sandy Lyle, Colin Montgomery, Bob
Yeah.
McIntyre, and English, and it's all done on a country basis. Now, why is that, Gordon? Because there is an inescapable fact that golf is a Scottish sport. The way it's developed and the way it's presented is from Scotland. The links courses, the parkland courses, the golf
Yeah.
ball, the clubs were developed here. So you cannot deny that Scotland is the home of golf because this predates 1707. It goes well back. Scotland was the home of golf. You cannot deny that. And if you try to deny it, St Andrews and Carnoustie, all these places will go up in arms. And because of the Open is it is an open field. That's why it's called the Open. Anyone can come into it, and the diaspora, all those people in around the world watch it to see the old country. And if you dare call it to them, it's Britain or UK, you're writing out history, and they don't like it. So that international market cannot be, you can't disappoint them because that's money.
You've actually put a spotlight on something which I hadn't thought of before, Norrie. Why is golf so prominently Scottish? And I think one of the reasons for that might be that golf is a sport that attracts wealthy people to play it. And when you have wealthy people playing a sport, they're mostly big businessmen, or business women now as well, business people, but they're usually wealthy, dynamic individuals who run or own businesses. And so when it's their sport invented in their country, they're going to take an awful lot more proprietorial kind of attitude to the sport. It's Scottish, you're not having it, and it's part of the Scottish elite system. And I think it is. I don't think it didn't develop in public schools. It developed in communities all around the country because there is a golf course for just about every village in Scotland.
Correct.
You can't about football stadiums, can you? But you can about golf courses because it was a sport that you could play on rough land. And that I think that's why it evolved at all. Because it was an ideal sport for sandy beachside courses, links courses. And it was something you could do for a relatively low sum of money, I guess, at the time. You just needed maybe 3 or 4 clubs in those days.
That's
and
right.
a ball.
Yep.
And something to play against,
Yeah.
And
that's the thing, Gordon. You've always got to remember this. Scotland, as sovereign Scots, it was always allowed, there was common green and common space for sport as it developed. And in Scotland, it was a common sport. It was if you wanted to, you could have a shot at it. Left-handers, right-handers, bad, good, whatever. And some people drifted back out from it, but a lot of people stayed and played golf. And it was a chance to get out from the mines, a chance to get away from the farms and all the hard, laborious work, and you would get fresh air. And it was encouraged. It was encouraged. People take up a bit of sport. In England, it wasn't. It was kept for the elites. And that's the big difference between Scotland and England.
There's a point here I think it's worth making. Golf is a game of skill. There is a physical element to it where you're going to be walking maybe 3.5, 4 miles around the golf course. And that is what most people can do in an average day themselves anyway, any normally fit human being. You don't have to be an athlete to play golf. You just need to have a good technique, a good swing, and a good drive for a putt. And that's all skill. And that's why it's so attractive. You don't have to be super mega fit to play it. You just need to be skillful and enjoy the game. And there's a big social element with golf that you don't get in other sports, where you talk business while you're playing sport, or you talk, world affairs, or you talk politics while you're playing.
Yeah.
There are sports that do that. This is why Trump loves golf, because he can entertain foreign dignitaries, enjoy a game of golf which he loves playing, and at the same time discuss world affairs. There are no other sports where you can do that. Not even snooker really has that sort of appeal.
No, but you can go into your old age, Gordon, and still be playing golf. It's addictive. It's addictive. It's like a cigarette. It's really addictive. They always say you hit one good shot and you'll be back for more. Out of a whole round, you hit one good shot. That's the one that sticks in your head.
I have a close sort of family member who's a professional golfer. My older brother is a pro golfer, and he's been playing golf since he was about 16. He had a promising career ahead of him as a football player. Initially, when he was at school, he was scouted for a major club in Scotland. He played a few, what I would have said was minor league games, and in one he got his ankle badly smashed in a foul tackle, and it basically crippled him. It took him over a year to recover from that, but while he was recovering from the injury, he took up golf, and within about 18 months, he was playing off scratch. He was so good.
Wow.
And then he became an assistant professional at his local club, and then he got his own club, and he's been there ever since. And good on him, he's good at teaching golf. That's what he does for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that he migrated to because he was so good at sport, and yet he was denied a career as a football player. But he was still managed to convert that skill into something else, and it was golf. He excels at, and he's particularly good at teaching people it as well. So
Well,
it's an accessible sport, but it's also a sport you can play even when you're partly disabled. That was my point.
yeah, you can. But the thing about the politics of sport and golf in particular, is you put your finger on it. You can make deals on a golf course. It's nice and quiet. You can no phones. It's just that you and another guy. And if he hits a good shot, that puts him in a good mood. And then you can surprise him by saying, look, I've got 50 million. Do you fancy putting in? Oh, 50 million. And that was a good shot, by the way. And he's in a state of euphoria, signs the deal, and they walk off the golf course, happy chappies, taking money off the people at the bottom. That's what they've used it for. But in terms of Scotland being under the cosh, and kept at a low level because of sport. I want to bring something else in, Gordon. It's rugby. We talked about sevens, and they got rid of our sevens team.
Yeah.
But why do we put up with this? That's just a direct question. Why do we put up with this? When we watch Scotland play rugby, we've got an English, what's called the anchor, the person who asks the questions. We've got an ex-England player, Martin Johnson, commentating. I'll get to that in a minute. You've got the token Anglo jock sitting there, and you might have somebody from the opposite country we're playing. So say Scotland are playing Italy, there might be an Italian guy there.
Right.
Why have we got two English people broadcasting to Scotland about a Scotland game that's got nothing to do with them?
Well, I don't think you really need to. That's a rhetorical question. The answer to that is really simple. They shouldn't be there. And they've been inserted into that studio for political reasons. There's no other reason why they should be there. You don't need a commentariat from England commentating on the Scottish game. It's just not warranted. But it's there for a reason. It's there so that when Scotland make a mistake and a slip up, they can magnify it up and say, oh, well, that was a terrible play from Scotland. They're definitely on a losing streak now. It's not looking good for them. And that just adds to the negative narrative that they like to maintain.
But it's very clever how they do it, Gordon. It's very, very clever, because at one point they'll go, oh, that was a great move. Scotland put it through the hands and they kicked ahead. But here's where they fall down. And it's that accent on the language and the emotion. This is where they fall down. They haven't got this complete setup, and it brings us down, down, down. And the Scots guy feels compelled just to agree because he's Anglo-Scots. The foreigner will maybe speak up for Scotland, but the anchor will compound it. And so what you get coming back from the TV screens into your living rooms is a negative aspect of Scottish sport again. Now, it's easy to be negative. That's the thing, Gordon. I could sit here and call you names. That's easy. But to be positive and start thinking about what makes Scott Gordon Ross tick, what's it? I have to think to get a positive message across. And it's lazy journalism. It's pathetic journalism. And it's damaging to the Scottish psyche. And it's this psychological attack on us that we've really got to buffer against, and demand that the BBC put 4 Scots and maybe 2 Scots and 2 Italians for an Italian match. That'd be a good mix-up. Maybe 2 English, 2 Scots for a Scotland-England game. That'd be a good mix-up. But get it balanced and get it fair. And don't gaslight us with how bad we are all the time. It's getting boring and we hate it. And we've found you out. We're looking at you. We're listening to you. Get lost. We've grown up. Scotland has grown up, and we want better than what we're getting served, Gordon.
I would agree, Norrie, but what you've just said has actually brought to light something else about rugby that isn't talked about much, and that is the fact that despite England claiming to have kind of invented football, which they of course didn't do, they did invent rugby. And because they invented rugby, and it's well documented how it supposedly happened, the whole mythology of picking the ball up and running with it during a school football game in a public school. Now that story is probably just complete mince. We all know it's probably just a myth invented to explain how it came into being. But the point is that they viewed rugby as something they own, they invented it. And so Scotland is allowed to play it. And therefore, there have to be English commentators at Scottish games because it's England's game. And this is the whole colonial mindset boiled down to its most basic. It's what they did with cricket. It's what they've done with rugby. They can't do it with golf, as you rightly pointed out, because the history there is irrefutable and they know it. They try it with football, but they definitely do it with rugby, and they do it with rugby because they see it as fair and the right way to do it.
The problem we've got, Gordon, though, the problem England's got is that New Zealand have been the rugby champions for the last 30, 40 years, and coming up behind them has been South Africa. And France are now top dogs as well.
Really
They've put money. And so England can't claim something because somebody else has stolen it. A new brand of rugby has been developed by the All Blacks. So it's almost like, the Chinese invented noodles and the Italians came along and says, we've reinvented it as pasta, so it's ours. They're claiming this wheat-based food stuff is theirs now. So New Zealand have done the same. They've taken rugby and taken it to a new level. And it's not English rugby as it was before. They used to not be able to jump up in the lineouts, for example. Now they do. The two guys can raise the other guy up. The moves, you can't ruck out the back. You can't. You can form a maul now. You couldn't do that back in the day when they were playing rugby. And the other thing is, Gordon, you've got two types of rugby. You've got rugby league and rugby union. Rugby league was for the working class, the miners of Yorkshire and Lancashire. Decided they didn't want all those rules that kept them guessing about how they play the game. They want a more simpler game, and they started rugby league with no scrums, no lineouts, just ball in hand, running, and stopping and starting, putting the ball between your legs. A lot of people can't stand rugby league. I don't like it myself, but I can understand why they would like it. I'm a rugby union guy because I like that physicality and all. But so therefore, England can't claim rugby, as maybe you're pointing out, because it's not theirs anymore. And it's just like cricket as well, Gordon. Cricket, they'll put their team on a high level, but I'm afraid Pakistan and India are the top dogs. Even the West Indies, all those places they colonised are now usurping them. It's embarrassing for them, but I'm loving it.
Talking of cricket, always the one thing that irritates me most of all about the BBC News is getting cricket scores from BBC. And now for the sport results. England are 42-8 in the third innings of such and such a test match, and it looks like they're on course for the follow-on. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell does all that mean?
I
don't get about that.
I know.
I don't know what the terms mean, and they're trotting this stuff as though there are thousands of millions of Scots who all understand the arcane rules of cricket. And we don't, and nobody's really that interested in it at all. And yet it's at the top of the sports news. And then it will be rugby, or it will be some big name football match like Man United or something like that against Crystal Palace. It will be some massive league game in England.
Yep.
We won't do anything. And then there'll be, and of course, then there'll be the news where you are, which is basically stuff I'm not interested in at all. The news where you are about your parochial, pathetic teams will be on BBC. And that is the way we're treated. The news where you are is basically inferior to the news where we are. And that's the way it will be.
Oh,
And so that's
aye.
laughable. The whole thing is laughable. And because we don't have our own television stations and we're forced to watch the outputs from England daily, we are inundated with this garbage about English sports that we don't have any interest in.
Yeah.
It would be like, Afghanistan broadcasting to us about some form of horse racing around the circuit in the Afghan mountains. We would have no interest in that at all. Maybe it's unusual, but it wouldn't affect us in any way, and it wouldn't stir our hearts and souls to get behind any of the clubs. So, sport, yeah, it's a great thing to go and watch, a piece of theatre, really. I mean, I'm a
Yes.
fan of Speedway. I'm going to go and watch the Glasgow Tigers versus the Edinburgh Monarchs, which is coming up next week. And that is a derby between Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's one of the biggest speedway
Yeah.
rivalries in the sport, and it's going to be a great night. And it costs me less than to go and watch a Premiership football game if I tried to get in at the
Wow.
gate. Less to go and watch this, and it's much more exciting.
Wow.
It's 2 non-stop racing, 15 races over a period of time. And it's done on a point system. And it's a bit like professional football in that the club has professionals from all over the place making up their team, as well as a local component. So it's good fun to watch. That sport
Well, you make a good point, Gordon. You make an interesting point because we all need excitement in our life. It's a humdrum kind of existence we've got, and any bit of excitement we will grab and we'll go and see it, and we'll get out of the house, out the four walls, and go and
Sure.
do something. The problem we've got, I think, is people aren't getting out of their houses, and they're getting their sport through the medium of a television or sometimes radio, or on your app. You can get any football match you want continually. And it's what it does, Gordon. It softens us politically, because if we're focused on football or rugby from another country, we forget what's outside our back door and the things that are happening to you and me on a daily basis. When laws are being passed and I didn't know that. How didn't you know that? I was watching the game. You've just lost benefits. You've just lost your allowances. You've just lost, and you didn't even know because you're not paying attention. But that's design, Gordon, and we've got to shake out. It's like the smoker giving up fags. We've got to gradually get people away from their TVs and their football and show them that it's a 90-minute fad. Go to a match. You've got to travel there. You've got to meet your mates. You might have a pint. You might get angry. You might be happy. But you've let go all those emotions at a football match because you've gone out and done something. You've gone out and watched. You've travelled. But if you're watching a telly, the best you can go is, oh yeah, good goal, and then play resumes. It's false entertainment, but it's been forced down our throats, even to the fact, Gordon, that Celtic and Rangers play each other at 12 o'clock on a Sunday, right? Dead time. That was dead time for a football match. But because Liverpool are playing Arsenal and then Man United are playing Tottenham Hotspur later, they've got to squeeze in Celtic Rangers at 12 o'clock. Know your place, Scotland. You're on early. You're the support for the big event. And the Celtic Rangers fans go to Parkhead and they get up early and they travel all over Scotland 6 o'clock in the morning to get to Ibrox or Parkhead for this football match.
I've never understood, Norrie, the idea of supporting a football team that is hundreds of miles away from me. I mean, even if I wanted to, I don't understand the mentality of people who would do that. You would have to be desperately in need of something to do that. I know a lot of people in other countries are manic about things like Man United. You get Chinese guys and Arabs and all sorts of other folk all over the globe who are absolute fanatics for Man United, and they've never been in Manchester in their entire lives. They know nothing about it. But that football team, that's it. That's their religion, basically. And that's the thing.
It's because it's force-fed.
It's a way of life. It's a religion to some people because they have nothing in their lives.
I tell you, Gordon, I know we've got about 3 minutes left of the show because it's just flown past. But if people have got any comments about sport and how it's affected them and how they've got themselves out of sport and watched more politics and can admit that they were caught up in the sport and propaganda, let's call it that. Leave your comments below and let's have a look at them, because if we talk to each other, we can get more done and we can explore different avenues. Please respond to what we're talking about. If you think we're talking rubbish, please put that in as well. Because we need to get different points of view, and that makes a good podcast when everybody's involved, not just me and you, Gordon.
I agree, Norrie. I mean, we all know that when there's a big Scotland game on of any kind, whether it's rugby or football, anywhere, that the First Minister and a bunch of other politicians will all show up, and they'll wear their kilts, and they'll put on their entire jerseys, and they'll wave their tartan scarves, and for 90 minutes they're a Scottish patriot.
Yep.
And then the game's over and it's back to normal, and we're back to being in devolution again. Okay, that's it. Normal life proceeds. We can forget it. That's the problem. Sport is a distraction, as you say. It's a fantasy world where the sport takes place in place of warfare. And it gives you that same feeling of victory when you beat another country, another city that's a rival of yours. Gives you a sense of pride, a sense of belonging, which is great, but it's not the most important thing in the world. It's an illusory feeling that lasts for a few days and then it's gone. Look at the way Newcastle celebrated their cup win recently. They were absolutely mental. It was the first time in 70 years that they'd won silverware like that. And all fair play to them. They deserved it. And they deserved that massive celebration through the town that they had. God, that's exactly what I would have expected to happen here if we'd won something like that. That was lovely. That was a nice thing to happen for the people of Newcastle. And it's probably buoyed them up for years to come.
Well, but the problem is, Gordon, Newcastle, like any other place, Manchester is deprived of facilities. It's going through austerity. Inflation's going through the roof. This is another distraction. I'm afraid it's when people are all happy together. That's great. That's fantastic. People are coming together, but they're coming together for sport. And again, if you're in a political position, you can see how you can maneuver that. You can come out like Tony Blair used to come out and say, "I support Newcastle because I went to university there and blah blah blah." He made a connection there. He had a connection with Scotland because he went to Fetis, and he had a connection with England, and he spread himself all over the place. He didn't know which side the man was on.
Yeah.
You've got to be really careful, because if Aberdeen or any other wee club wins the Scottish Cup, it's great. But it takes people away from all their problems of the day. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Taking away from the humdrum of life and having a bit of it, isn't it good to be in good spirits again? Because we haven't had that for a while. But at the same time, that's when laws are passed. That's when things come in that you don't know about. That's when your council might put the council tax up when you're out celebrating for your team. We don't know what happens. People.
Just losing you there, Norrie. I seem to have lost contact with you, Norrie. You're still hearing us, Norrie? Hi, Norrie. You dropped out there for a minute.
Yeah, I'm just saying, be careful about euphoria and how it can be taken.
You seem, Norrie, forgive me, Norrie, you just seem very, very quiet.
I'm not quiet. Can you hear me okay?
You seem quiet, and I'm hearing an echo of your voice. It might be that your microphone's picking up my voice from your phone.
It is. It is. We've just come to the end anyway, Gordon. So we'll call it quits
Yeah.
there. Aye. But remember, sport is not all it seems to be. And remember, while you're watching sports, they're doing something else.
Yeah, it's being used to depoliticize people, to distract them from the reality of their daily lives and the political situation that's changing around them. And if you allow it to do that, then whatever happens to you as a result is largely your own doing because you've just ignored it and you've allowed yourself to be distracted. And we can't afford that at the moment.
No, we can't. All focus on independence and your country's future. There's a UN proposition
Yeah.
being put through. We have to get right behind that. That's a better thing to follow than football. Come on, because that's what we're leaving behind to our kids and our grandkids. Come on, that's better than football any day of the week.
Well, listen, Norrie, I think we've just about done the subject of sport to death. So I think maybe stop today's broadcast. I'm still having problems with your side.
All right, Gordon, look after yourself and have a great day. The sun's shining here, so I'm going to get out.
All right, Norrie, listen, I'll see you again next Friday. Thank you for being with us again. And I'll see you next week.
Top man, Gordon, all the very best.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye
Norrie.
now.
I'll see you soon. Okay, and thank you to all my viewers who've stuck with the program all the way through to the end. As I said at the beginning, please like and subscribe, comment on the channel, and don't forget to press the notification bell. All of these things make the program easier for other people to see, and it makes it seen in a much wider audience across the globe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Hod My Jacket. Bye for now.